it is time for my 2025 Read Recap for Q3. These are going to be all the books that I read in the third quarter of 2025. So that includes the months of July, August, and September. Now, I will admit this the quarter was a lot of audio for me. It's a very busy season. We're coming to the end of it, but just the time constraints, I was able to fit in a lot more audiobooks than physical books, and that's just how it fell out for me this quarter. So getting started, we're going to go back, we're going to rewind back to July. So July 2025 was a rough month. I only read 2 books. Both were physical books. One was The Kitchen House by Kathleen Grissom for my book club. Very good. It was a hard read. It was one of those that you start reading these historical books, and the person, Ms. Grissom, the author, she had done a ton of research, was able to invoke a lot of emotions from me in this book. She also wrote a book that I read a couple months ago for book club back in the spring called Crow Mary. But yeah, we read The Kitchen House because we really liked Crow Mary as a group, so we read Kitchen House, and then it was a hard read, but made it through. And then I read after that Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas to kind of bring a little more light into this, even though this is still a hard book, starting to learn more about your main character there. That was a good one. But that's all I got in for August. For July. Now we're going to move on to August. So in August, I read 4 books, 1 physical book and 3 audiobooks. So I read, hang on, I'm looking at my notes. I got to make sure I read it right. For book club, we read The Last Green Valley by Mark Sullivan. This was another book that it was hard. It was such a hard read. Given the story and the material, and that it was based on the true story of a family. And I don't want to give too much away. It's set in World War II, at the end of World War II, and it follows a family living in Ukraine as they are stuck between the incoming Soviet army and the retreating Nazi party. And they're stuck in between. And so it's, do we follow the wolves to escape what's coming for us? Do we fall, it's basically a lesser of 2 evils that they need to pick. And just how they ended up staying together. You have to read it. Even as hard as it is, please look into The Last Green Valley. Then, because that book was so heavy, I listened to some smutty books. These were recommended to me by a parent that I know, and it was Gild and Glint by Raven Kennedy. Apparently these are the first 2 books in a series of 6. That's all that I had available to me through my library Hoopla app. They were good, not too bad. Fantasy, escapism. I just needed something where I have a lot going on right now, and I needed my hands free, so it was great to be able to listen to those and move forward. The third audiobook and the 4th book for the month that I listened to and read was The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I have officially listened to the entire trilogy for the Lord of the Rings. And it was so good. I can see where the movies took a creative liberty from the story to move the story forward. I'm so happy that I listened to this. Tolkien, just the writing, it's good. I did enjoy the fact that I had an idea of what was happening from watching the films. But yeah, I'm glad that I have the stories. Maybe someday I'll actually get to read the physical book with my own eyes, but I enjoyed listening to it, especially for the pronunciation of the Elven languages and Orc. It's helpful, and it sets the stage a little bit better. So that was August. So like I said, 4 books, 1 physical, 3 audio. coming into September. Now, this is another one. I have 4 books that I finished, 2 physical, 2 audio. Both books came from the library. One was for me, one was for book club. So the one that I read for myself was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. So I had listened to Fourth Wing and Iron Flame earlier this year, back in like the first quarter. And Onyx Storm, like right after Onyx Storm was released, I was listening to those 2. And I finally had a chance to read Onyx Storm because they had it at the library in physical book form. It's not available on Hoopla for audio, but I will say, having listened to Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, when I was reading the physical book, it made more sense because of knowing how to pronounce like the country and the school. Those are names that, like, if I had just read them from the beginning, I probably would have gotten tripped up on like how to phonetically sound that out in my mind. So it was nice that I had an idea of how to say those words or how they're to be pronounced. So that was helpful. Then we read for book club last month, we read The Rooster Bar by John Grisham. Quick read, came out probably like at least 7-8 years ago, if not 10 years ago. Fast read, moves along pretty quickly. Parts of it were hard to read, like frustrating, because you, having lived through some of what was happening, at least that time, and knowing what was going on, it made it hard. But it was a good book, worth the read. Then I listened to another smutty book, and it was super, super smutty. And it was an audiobook, which I normally don't like for that. It was called Desperate Measures by Kate Robert, and Kate with 2 E's. It was okay. It was one of those just to help me, because Onyx Storm and The Rooster Bar and the month before, with just the heaviness, those were hard to get through. And yeah, I needed a little bit of fluff to have in there. And then I just finished the month of September on the 30th, listening to Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes by E. Randolph Richards and Brandon O'Brien. This is a book that probably came out like in 2013 or something like that. Like it's older now, at least 10, if not 15 years old. And it's a book that's been on my TBR for a long time. I know my Hoopla app had it in the e-reader, the ebook version, but it was just one of those, like, I couldn't get into the ebook when I tried to read it several years ago, and they've now released an audio version. So I listened to the audio, and it just, I had this understanding, and from the bits I tried to read over the years of this book, it's very helpful as far as revealing blind spots that we have in our Western culture regarding Christianity or faith. So just something, if you're in that vein of faith, it is worth checking out. It does make you question some of the things of the Americanized Christianity, and makes you realize, blind spots that you may already have, things that I'd heard about through other book forms, but just, I'm glad to have that one checked off, so that way I know what was in it for myself. So that brings my total for Q3 to 10 finished books. Now, I still have not finished Mrs. Dalloway. That is still a work in progress. It's a hard book. I might have to switch to the audio version for that to check her off, and we'll see. Hopefully in Q4 I'm able to get Mrs. Dalloway checked off. We'll see. But that's just one of those, it's a little bit harder of a read. It's a short book, but it's a harder read, just given the flow of consciousness that it is. But what have you read this quarter? Has it been a mix and variety like mine, where I feel like I was all over the place as far as genres go? And I'm very curious what you found to read in Q3, what you'd recommend, books you'd say don't waste your time on, and are there any books that you're looking forward to in the last quarter of 2025? So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.